the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
The Stevens Institute of Technology is proud to present the Hugo New Corporation Sustainability Seminar Series, brought to you by Brown & Caldwell, Geocetic Consultants, H2M Architect and Engineers, BEM Systems, and Catalyst Group.
Great, thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to be here, and also for Hugo New to be a sponsor of this wonderful sustainability seminar series with Stevens. I'm particularly excited about this particular panel. As Dibs indicated, it actually was, it's the culmination of work that I had begun actually for a number of years, lots of work, to develop an alternative approaches and working with wonderful partners, creative problem solvers and leaders. It's really just been an honor. The people that are here today, I have to just also take this opportunity to say thank you for taking on the tough challenges, and importantly, figuring out how to make progress happen in communities, where communities, in fact, are acknowledging that and finding self-reliance, self-identity, a sense of pride, and a sense of a real future. I know there are many other people behind the people that you see here, just as there were working with me at EPA. And in fact, I hope some of them get acknowledged today. But this particular effort was called Community-Based Public-Private Partnerships. I will say it was an alternative to P3s that we've heard about. Certainly not privatization, but it was a way to change the focus on stormwater and, importantly, green infrastructure, because these have been, distributed practices, technologies that to address the one of the fastest growing problems. But how do we get a legitimacy for larger investments in making integrated green stormwater infrastructure happen, while realizing the benefits, the multiple benefits of green infrastructure, including that local viability? And today, we're going to have a different conversation about these hallmark CBP3s in Prince George's County and Chester, PA, because we're going to really talk more about how there has been success and focus on social justice and environmental justice, words we're hearing a lot today. For some of us that I'm certain have worked in the area, it's interesting to see the evolution of the definitions, the applications, the equity, the fairness. I wonder how many people are confused by it. So these models kind of give us a real solid sense of the actual applications and bringing fair and equitable opportunities in watershed protection and resilience to communities. So I'm going to introduce our panelists very quickly and ask that you check the website for everybody's bios. Pretty extensive bios. I'll start with Joseph Gill, who is the director of Prince George's County Department of Environment. And I have to say that I first met Joe when he was Secretary of Environment, Department of Natural Resources in Maryland. He has always been very, very connected to communities, very focused, particularly on those who are marginalized, and certainly very committed to science and in solving our environmental problems. And I'm just delighted that, Joe, you could join us, the wealth of experience and accomplishment that you bring. Dr. Strand, Dr. Horace Strand, Reverend Strand, has been a recognized leader in environmental justice. In fact, from Chester, Pennsylvania, many years ago, as I joke with him, he was a very young man when I first met him. I was actually running the environmental justice program for the Mid-Atlantic and worked with Chester and Dr. Strand on the growing disproportionate adverse impacts. I think it was soil incinerators at the time. We did the first cumulative risk assessment of its type in the country. He's been on the EPA Environmental Justice Advisory Council for numerous years, same in the state. Will continue to be who he is in that regard. And it was great to see how his interest in the mayor and the city's interest in water quality, in addressing local flooding and improving neighborhoods, integrated very nicely with really the objectives of justice, which is that everyone has a fair opportunity to improve livability. So very, very delighted to work with Dr. Strand and to have him join us. Greg Canito, what can I say about Greg that hasn't already? A book has been written about the man, okay? Can you see that book? That's one of the books I just want to show. He was also a very young man when I met him. And actually many, many years going back, maybe 8 years now, I thought it was important to work with experts in the field around the country as we were trying to figure out how to help communities. I will say Prince George's County stepped up and said, we got to try something different. EPA partnered with us. We don't have $1.3 billion to meet the Bay TMDL. And we knew we needed to reach out to private sector. We needed to reach beyond government. We did global expert panels and found that the government does not seek partners in the private sector to the extent that we could to get that different levels of knowledge in solving problems, along with the fact that we need to move fast. Greg is definitely a creative problem solver and cares about the community. And Clarvius, I must say, also has applied its knowledge base in working with communities to this effort for success. So very, very pleased to have Greg, and I hope Keisha's on, and all the great folks that behind the scenes have been important in making these happen. Michael Burke, I really want to get Michael to New Jersey to work with us, maybe a few places around the country. You will not hear the type of presentation from Michael Burke. I have been on many panels and many presentations on these types of things. And the first time I heard Michael, I had a whole different level of experience in terms of connectivity with communities, and particularly struggling communities, and what it really, really takes to make these things happen. Coming from EPA and being in the company of policy wonks out there, you need to go visit these communities. You need to take a walk with Michael Burke and his work in these communities to have a better understanding of the challenges. You're going to hear some of that today, but particularly those of us coming from the environmental field that have sort of put ourselves in a bubble and then thought we could see success. It really takes an integration and understanding the people in the community, the businesses in the community, and how to work with them. So I'm just extremely pleased to have Michael and his expertise shared today. And Dr. Seth Brown, who's Executive Director of National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, NIMSA, and who has worked with me in the past. And in fact, you'll hear about a new center dedicated to resource support for communities that want to do CBP3s. And Seth is here as that resource, and we'll hear maybe a little bit from him later on. I'm gonna skip through a lot of things because we're out of time. I'm out of time. You need to hear from the panelists. I'm gonna turn it over to Joe Gill, but just as a backdrop, what's the so what of this and what we're talking about in stormwater? The point is that most of our rivers and streams are failing. There's a requirement to do assessments of our water resources, and at least 1 in 4 or more. When you do the math here, 70% are failing. And which means that what we've done so far does not work. We've got to find other ways to address it. Peak runoff, pollutant loading, CSOs, overlapped with stormwater, pathogens, now including COVID, PFAS. All of this runs off into our waters, and what it could be a drinking water supply. Certainly there's exposure to people. A growing business case for address of water, including the fact that some businesses use lots of water. Speaking of AI and data, we need viable, cost-effective solutions. Just as an example, we turn to look at market-based solutions, those solutions that address the values of a community and bring benefits to that community, including the use of technologies and using what we're now calling these high-performance partnerships because of the growing demands, deteriorated infrastructure. Now with COVID and public health, municipalities, localities are the ones with the brunt. Our county and local jurisdictions. How do we help them? How do we find other ways to address all the needs that they're facing? And we need to enlist the market. We need to look at alternative ways of bringing resources to these communities. So here's the community-based model platform. What's important to note is many folks have heard P3, so they think, oh, it needs P3 legislation. It's a traditional P3. We've got legal issues with that. Actually, it's a procurement. It's a contract, and many folks don't realize the flexibility of your procurement processes and contracts in terms of being able to get the address of key performance targets that you want to address. And you'll hear more about it. I just wanted to introduce the platform, also show that this changes by the needs of that community because it is driven by the community. If it's economic redevelopment, if it's CSOs, et cetera, small jobs creation, it is very flexible because it is place-based. It is saying, I see you community, I'm gonna work with you on what is of value as an investment in you. So I'll just sort of end here with this slide because this is the focus of today's panel, is now to also bring to bear how these efforts are creating sustainable water quality protection, sustainable public health protection because of what's being done environmentally, ways to improve the lives of people in those communities who would otherwise be lost. Some communities would otherwise be lost, and how that relates to resilience and the ability for a community to have its own self-reliance, an investment in its own health and its own future. And I will, with that, am delighted to turn it over to Joe Gill to share the the great work of the Clean Water Partnership.
Well, thank you very much, Dominique. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and with others, especially Greg and Michael. Greg hails from my hometown, Buffalo, New York, which is currently having a wonderful football season to the extent there is a season. Michael and I have become friends, so it's been a good ride with the Clean Water Partnership. I am Joe Gill. I'm the Director of the Environment for Prince George's County. We formed with the Corvius company, the Clean Water Partnership, back in 2015. Next slide. So this is the Clean Water Partnership. It's a 30-year partnership. This is first I'm going to start with kind of a top-level summary. A 30-year partnership to identify, design, build, not so much finance, but operate and maintain stormwater assets. Prince George's County plus Corvius equals the Clean Water Partnership. And it is based, as Dominique said, on the community-based public-private partnership model developed by US EPA. And it was developed to provide multiple benefits, not just stormwater restoration, but socioeconomic efficiencies and whatnot. So I start with the problem, which is, why are we doing this in the first place? In this case, going back to, again, to Dominique's slide about the waters of the United States being in trouble, one of those waters is the Chesapeake Bay. Back in 2010, as a result of litigation filed against EPA and the other states, Maryland and Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, a couple other states that are the Bay states, entered into agreements to clean up the Chesapeake Bay by 2025. There are various sources of pollutant loading into the bay. Pollutants being nutrients, nitrogen, sediment, and phosphorus. And the sources being wastewater treatment plants, agriculture, septic, and stormwater sectors. So what EPA and the states, through the states, ended up doing was allocating load reductions, the so-called pollution diet, to these sectors. One of those sectors was the counties, and one of those counties was Prince George's. In Prince George's, our requirement was to treat 20% of our untreated impervious surface. That is to say, asphalt, highways, whatnot, that were no longer permitting drainage like forest land, forest space would, into the ground, but were instead running off acid rain, oils, grease, soot, nitrogen, whatnot, into the water. So that was the goal, 6,105 acres. Over a 5-year National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, over a 5-year term, at a significant cost, running into government procurement and delivery issues. And by that, what I mean is, if you've not had experience with the government, you can't do anything quickly, anything. It takes forever to hire, it takes forever to bid, it takes forever to design, it takes forever to do anything. So we had a very short window of time to get this work done. So what's an approach? Well, first of all, where we're doing it. We're doing it in Prince George's County. Now, if you've ever driven into Washington, D.C. from New Jersey, from any points north, and taken New York Avenue into the district, you will have come through Prince George's County. It is highly urbanized. There are very few stormwater retrofit controls before 1990. So much of the stormwater simply runs off into the main river systems of the Anacostia, right through the center of the county, and the Patuxent into the bay. Again, there's the target. And to retrofit, basically to treat an area, and I like to think about a schoolyard. Think about a schoolyard, which all kinds of cars, all kinds of traffic, a large high school, and all that water just draining into the stormwater inlet at the end of it. Not being caught, not being captured, not being treated, not being filtered. One project at a time. And by one project, what I mean is this. So here's one example of a project that ultimately Corvius did. It took a pond in Bowie, Maryland at Old Chapel Park. If you look at the bottom part of the slide first, that's what it looked like first. And then the top part is what it looked like after it was retrofitted. Now that provided a drainage, pollutant drainage of 8 impervious acres. There you see the reduction benefits in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. And there are some co-benefits of park aesthetics and wildlife and whatnot. But then you get back to the bottom line, 8 impervious acres. There's another 5,980 to go. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? So you'll see, and I often see this more recently, I think in the newspaper, about this public-private partnership model. Community-based is a modifier to it, but ultimately it's the question of a public-private partnership. And I do hear people talk about this and say, wow, they've got a public-private partnership. That must be good. And what I tell them is that it's a contract. It's not a marriage. You know, it's a contract with rights and responsibilities on either side. The unique thing about a public-private partnership contract is that it's shifting the risks. I'll get to more of that in a minute, but of performance, of payment, of time, or of costs. Ordinarily, the owner bears all those risks, that it won't get done right, that payments money won't be available, that it won't get done on time, there'll be cost overruns. We also shift the risks of financing and maintenance. Maintenance, long-term maintenance is always an issue. Construction risks alone. The time it takes to plan a project. What if you plan the wrong one? What if it's in the wrong place? The time to design it. What if the design is incomplete? What if the bid specifications are not accurate? What will that mean? What delays will that cause? What about construction and cost overruns? And then, as I earlier mentioned, long-term maintenance. Very few, I will hasten to say this, very few owners think seriously enough about the long-term maintenance of their assets, because they will need to be here for a long period of time. We're supposed to design these things for at least 30 years. And if you're not designing them in such a way that requires you to maintain them, you may design them poorly. So how did the Clean Water Partnership address that? We started out as an increment of the 6,000 acre requirement. We started out with up to $100 million over 3 years. Now, over 3 years, there are longer term efficiencies that one can realize in the marketplace. A 3-year contract is a better contract than a 1-year contract. It allows general contractors to select longer term subs and longer term suppliers and drive down pricing over the long term. There was also in this an incentive. It had to be done in 3 years, and there would be an evaluation to see whether or not what was done was sufficient to enable Corvius to get an additional 2,000 acres in phase 2. What about payment? So performance and payment, Corvius was in the main only paid for projects that were constructed, not simply planned or designed. They had to have been constructed. And that removes the risk of planning and design from the owner. It says we're only paying for that which actually goes into the ground. It's similar to what's called an outcome-based contract. You'll see that term used here and there in the marketplace these days. For the work, Corvius was to receive a base fee of 5% of the $100 billion, up to of that, and 1% incentives for meeting budget, 1% for the budget, and 1% for the timeline. But here's the beauty of the partnership in terms of the community basis part of it. The rest of the incentives, 3%, again, over a $100 million contract, $3 million, was based upon Corvius's ability to bring local, minority, small businesses to the table. There were percentages placed in the contract that were tied to these incentive payments. The county has, you'll see under the second bullet there, something they call the First Jobs Act, which in general means that for large contracts, the county's desire is that at least 40% of the money it spends goes to local based contractors. And think how much sense that makes, right? You can create a whole contracting mechanism, and then contractors come in from out of state and suddenly are gobbling up the work that could be go to your local residents. This is something that was part of the Corvius contract. Interestingly enough, and it took a while for me to understand this, having those requirements in place influences project selection. Because if you're going to be hiring small local firms, they're not going to be having large earth moving equipment to do the larger parts of the project. You will need to design retrofit small ponds, rain gardens or whatnot in churches and schools. And that's what Corvius did to meet those requirements. A second element of this was a annual plan and budget book, a review and approval process. That had the partners talking all the time. We had to approve the plan each year and each budget book for each project. The third element was the third party certifying the work had to be done. It just couldn't be, we thought it was done right, you thought it was done wrong, whatnot. There was a third party certifier that was paid under the contract. And then lastly, there was 30 years of maintenance, assuring that the work was built to last, and a separate agreement with Corvius for that long-term maintenance project. So here's a couple of the numbers that where we ended up. As of July of 2020, you'll see the church and school projects. You'll see the large-scale pond and stream restoration work that we've done, all of it on time and within budget. We signed a phase 3 agreement. There are some target class utilization targets that Corvius was able to meet as of July 2020, and the mentor protege program, which Michael will talk about in a little bit, to actually grow our local businesses. So those to me are the elements of a potential community-based public-private partnership. I would want to say that in looking at the model that Corvius presented, that it's repeatable, that it can be done in other settings, that you identify your acreage requirement, you provide payment incentives, you have an inspection and certification program so that there's no doubt when payments required, you have a planning process, and you make sure there's local socioeconomic incentives. You require the money to go back into the local community, which means for that to happen, the contractor has to engage with nonprofit community groups, has to go into the community, and has to find contractors and programs to sponsor and to mentor. So I didn't want to go over my time, but I think that's sort of my wrap. Was these are the keynotes for creation of what we saw to be a successful and still ongoing community-based public partnership with Corvius.
Great, thanks, Joe. We're going to hold off on questions and just move through. And we've got Greg. Well, I guess it's a toss. Michael, perhaps, or Greg. I know Greg has slides. How do you guys want to?
Well, I think Michael, let me let Michael build off of Joe's last points, and then I can follow Michael.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg. I was waiting for you to go. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me for this panel. I don't have any slides, so I'm just going to talk to you directly about kind of what we're doing and what's happened in the Clean Water Partnership since I've been there, which is 2016. But the program started about a few months before that, February 2016. So the first thing I want to talk about is community-based public-private partnership. When you put community-based in front of the public-private partnership, that has a tone about it. And one of the things that this program has really done and Corvius has focused on is the community-based component. I've worked on since 2002, large projects, highway projects, urban projects where there were goals established. They never called it a community-based project, even though they had goals. The difference in this program was that it was a community-based public-private partnership. And when you're talking about a program that goes for 3 years and you're talking about being community-based, you have an opportunity to build sustainability in the business inclusion part of the project as well. You have an opportunity to do social justice and economic justice with a project like this. The Corvius goals for this project are 50% target class. Target class includes local, small, and minority businesses. And of that 50% of that target class has to be done with local county-based businesses. So it's a two-phase or two-pronged requirement. What does that mean for a unit to do that, a program to do that? The program requires a culture of inclusion. It requires the engineering part, the design. It requires the construction, the general contractors. It requires all the consultants on the program to really understand that we're focused on the community and we're focused on working with the community. So what we did was establish a contractor development program to develop long-term sustainable contractors capable of doing green infrastructure work in the county. If you look at Joe's slide number 9, which I'm not going to put back up, but he talked about 81% target class participation. You'll find very few projects that can support and sustain a number like 81% of target class participation. And so how do you do that? The only way you can do that is to focus on doing the majority of the work with local participation. Joe mentioned a lot of projects like this. Companies come in from other parts of the area or other states to do the work because they know it's $100 million worth of work. The beautiful thing about these projects is the projects range in average between $1 million, $500,000 to $10 million. But most of the projects are reasonable enough for small contractors to participate. And having a long-term program requires an opportunity for them to develop as they grow. So what we've done is we reached out to the local community. We've hired 80% of the contractors are small, local, or minority businesses. That's a huge number when you're talking about, Joe's number was $163 million to date. We take 80% of that number and you can see the impact that that's having on the community. What happens when you bring businesses from the community and the work stays in the community? They hire local. And if they're not hiring local, they're sustaining local work for the current crews. Remember, this is construction work. So if a construction company is small and they have 4 crews, those crews get to maintain their work by bidding work on the Clean Water Partnership. And so over a period of 4 years, we have shown the marketplace how to bid the work, how to compete for the work. And we have trained and developed contractors. The Mentor Protege program has had over 32 companies that have come through the Mentor Protege program. That program is a 1-year program. And during that program, we have 3 components. We train the firms in the areas where they are deficient the most. That would be estimating, that would be cost accounting, that would be bonding, et cetera. We also provide supportive services to those firms so that if their taxes aren't correct, if they're trying to increase their bonding, we have bonding agencies that they can work with. If they don't have marketing or marketing support, no websites, if they're not comfortable talking with large general contractors, we train them how to do that. We do matchmaking with the general contractors in our program so that the firms start to get comfortable. They get comfortable not only with bidding the work, they get comfortable with performing the work. The Mentor Protege program has built in a pilot project so that every year, the cohort that is in place is one project is set aside for that cohort to bid. And we open up the entire bidding process for those small contractors so they learn how the bidding is done. They learn where they were short or where they were overpriced. They learn, did they use the right equipment? So they learn the whole process from soup to nuts of bidding a project, putting a project in the ground. We select a winner, and the winner actually has to install the project. During that installation, we actually have the firms once a week meet so that they can see how the work progresses, so that the small businesses that didn't win the work can ask questions about well, why are they doing it this way? Why is the riprap being put there? How do you do erosion and sediment control? All of the components of the project are dealt with every week until that project is completed. So we've done 3 pilot projects so far with mentor protege firms. Each cohort has achieved the winner, and the winner has actually put the work in. All of those protege firms that have done the pilot projects are from Prince George's County. And what we've done is we've also connected those firms to other work in the region. We do an alert system where we alert the firms that are in our both mentor protege program and in our contracted development program that there's work in Baltimore, that there's work in Washington, DC. They're now capable of bidding that work, and they have past performance with the Clean Water Partnership. 2 key points that the Clean Water Partnership has done. First one is put in the escrow fund so that the small businesses are guaranteed to get paid within the 30-day window. And once you can do that and sustain paying small businesses in 30 days, it brings small businesses to us because they hear that they know they're going to get paid. What does that mean for a small company? What that means is I don't have to cash flow that job beyond 30 days. Most construction companies and most firms, they're getting paid in 60 to 80 to 90 days. And what happens is they have to have lines of credit, they have to use their credit cards, they have to fund that job themselves. And this project getting paid 30 days, once you get into the cycle, then you know that you can fund that project. It allows them to bid other work. It allows them to ensure they get paid. It allows them to hire and recruit and train because they can tell the people that you know you're going to get paid because the program has an escrow fund put in. The second thing that the program has that's a mandatory piece is small businesses do not have to have bonding up to $1 million worth of work. So they do not have to have a bond. But in the mentor protege program, our whole goal is to make sure that every company has bonding capacity, whether the program requires a bond or not. So what that allows us to do is if you're a small business and you come into the program, and you bid a job and you win the job, let's say it's a $250,000 job, you do not have to put up a bond for that $250,000 job. What does that do for your company? That allows your company to gain past performance on CWP projects so that when it's time to go get your bonding, you have the ability to show the bonding agency, the surety, that you've done 3 projects with the Clean Water Partnership. Those 3 projects can be validated and approved, and therefore your bonding capacity should be at least at a minimum the total of those 3 projects. So let's say they're $250 a piece. So give me at least that much bonding for my company because I can prove to you that I've done the work. The other thing that we do is we've hired 7 or 8 local consulting firms, again, community-based. We went to the community to find firms in the community that can help our small businesses with taxes, that can help our small businesses with strategic planning, that can help our small businesses with estimating. So we use local businesses to work with the local businesses to provide the support. And what we've done is we've negotiated a rate for those small businesses to work with the local consultants that we've hired at a rate lower than what would typically be provided because we've negotiated the small businesses and the consultants. The consultants have no marketing costs. We pass the firms to the consulting firm. So as a result, they have no marketing. So we want that marketing profit to be the discounted rate that they provide to our small businesses to continue to develop our small businesses. And lastly, one of the things that we've looked at is when you're talking about sustainability. So we have firms that have been in the program since the beginning that are continuing to bid CWP work, and they have to win the work. So it's not that we're giving them the work, it's a bid project. So they have to bid the project, it's competitive bidding, they have to win the work, and then they can install the work. So we're doing the same things that most large projects do. So the third thing is that we decided that maintenance, being that maintenance is 30 years, as Joe mentioned, that the maintenance side is aesthetic maintenance and it's functional maintenance. Well, that's a landscape. Aesthetic maintenance can be done by landscapers. So landscapers to us is the lowest point of entry. And in our community, there are lots of landscape companies, but they don't understand green infrastructure for the most part. So we have to teach them green infrastructure work so that they can compete and provide long-term maintenance over a 30-year window. We currently have about 400 BMPs installed. And so the maintenance project opportunities will continue to grow as we put work in the ground. And so we're going to now develop landscapers and build our capacity in landscaping for green infrastructure. And our landscape program requires people to have a specific Chesapeake Bay landscape professional certification, requires them to have erosion and sediment control. So we have some minimum requirements that we know if they meet those requirements, whether they bid CWP work or not, the firms are more competent. We are creating social equity and we are creating economic sustainability with the entire program. So I'll close there.
Great. We're going to move to Greg. And I guess, Greg, we need to do a screen share. You've got slides.
I got it. Before I jump into slides, because I'm terrible at slides, I just wanted to say a couple of things that, first of all, thank you for allowing me to participate. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to have this opportunity. And if there's anything, I don't give advice very often, but if there's anything I can advise the individuals you have here, Dr. Strand, Dominique, Seth, Joe, Michael, if to the students, if you take a moment, go to the calendar invite, copy the emails, put it into your email network listserv, and email these people in the future. They'd be more than happy to talk to you and answer any questions you have. It's an incredible amount of experience and these are public champions and true practitioners, all the way down from the federal down to the local government, and just incredible individuals who have done tremendous practicing on this, and you just can't tell you how much the wealth of knowledge. So please, if you do anything as students, take advantage of their email address, email them. They will feel compelled to respond, and they'll do it willingly anyways, but take advantage of it. It's a great opportunity.
But you should email Greg first.
Yeah.
Yeah, Samir
Don't get us started.
Yeah, Samir will, send the emails to everyone.
Okay, so I just recommend take advantage of it. They're tremendous contacts.
I'm putting his in Times Squares just so this, and they will know how to do what you just suggested.
So real quickly with some slides, I'll try to connect into a lot of the points that Joe has already made, but also apply it to Dr. Strand's program in the city of Chester and the federal level for Dominique, and how and Michael's program for capacity development, and how private sector can be a catalyst. And the role of I would just say kind of the prime or the partner on the private side is intended to be that ability to organize these resources and bring the center of excellence together, and how we do that in a little more detail. I think I'm going to blow past this real quick, but what I wanted to what this slide is just meant to do is really just address the stormwater. You guys all know the why of stormwater is incredibly important. It's local, it's real, it's an infrastructure that's at the root of everything we do in development or land planning or land development is about staying dry. And the incredible importance of how we develop and redevelop our land to changing economies, changing uses, the changing world is critical to ensure the health of water, health of our community, and just the overall, again, I stress the most important thing to development is staying dry. And as we recycle and reutilize land. There's no mystery that weather patterns and regulation has driven a tremendous backlog and challenge to local municipalities on how they administer land and a disconnected, fragmented infrastructure like stormwater. It's easy to just collect it and shift it, but regulations have changed it to treatment on site. And to Joe's point, not just impervious acreage treatment to evolve to greater technologies, but then pollution and TMDL reductions, specifically for the Mid-Atlantic, but then the complete opposite out west for scarcity and capture, and how to design a connected infrastructure solution that is by this nature piecemealed and fragmented and not controlled by geographic barriers, but more by natural barriers. And it has created a significant marketplace that, if you're looking at the stormwater industry as a potential future on the private or public side, it's here to stay, and it's going to continue to evolve in the growing future. But it's a tremendously large marketplace that's growing in the stormwater side as we continue to develop and grow in these urban centers. The community-based partnership construct. So, the why or the key aspects about it. Joe said it correctly. It was a adaptation of public-private partnerships, and there was a very specific purpose in working with the EPA and Dominique to insert the community base. It's not a centralized asset. It's not like a big treatment center or a big energy production center. It is a fragmented infrastructure that's throughout the community and very pervasive in everything that we do, and it affects all aspects of our operations. And because of that, and the investment that government's making, it had to be community centric. It had to be understood. It had to be consumable by the local community, and it's a Main Street USA type challenge, and it needs to be done by Main Street USA. To Joe's point, the expertise and the knowledge of it needs to be captured and grown, and the intellectual capacity needs to be captured locally, because at the end of the day, you can design great stormwater, but you're always going to have to kick the curb when you install it. And you're going to have to, because water just doesn't work the way you always want it to work in practicing. And you're always going to have local knowledgeable watershed knowledge in order to put the devices and the technologies in the right place. And so they need to be performance-based, because there's a significant public investment that Joe and Dr. Strand and Dominique in her previous life manage, and billions of dollars that are being put into this, and it needs to be performed. It needs to perform. And that is not just because of the custodianship of the money, but also because we need to prove out these technologies so that they can continue to be adapted and evolved and improved. Risk mitigation. Joe talked correctly in the contract about the fact that risk is transferred. CommunityBased plays the role of taking that risk and owning that risk, but and doing it in a way where we de-risk programs. Risk is a very, very healthy word. It's without any risk, there is no reward. It's the basis of business, but it's the management and the de-risking that, and I'll touch upon that in a little bit, that what we do is in the community-based partnership is to take a lot of fragmented, piecemealed projects that by themselves individually can be seen as risky projects, but aggregated together, you can de-risk the overall implementation. You can create more predictability. You can create more economies of scale. You can, as Joe said, this process is repeatable. A community-based partnership is a repeatable construct. CommunityBased takes great pride in doing it so well and being a part of developing it, but it is a repeatable process or repeatable construct that is based on core business principles and fundamentals of reducing barriers to entry for greater participation, creating economies of scale so that you can have more supply chain process engineering and supply chain efficiencies, and creating, incorporating stormwater as an asset, treating it like an asset with life cycle management, and creating outcome-based design that aligns with the maintenance and the long-term lasting life cycle of it. And all those are general principles in any type of revenue generating asset that you'll see out there in the marketplace that the community-based partnership brings together so well in the way that the programs are structured. Investment. There's an aspect of risk capital. I want to stress investment doesn't always mean financing. What's unique about the stormwater industry is that the municipal government and the federal government have access to the cheapest capital possible. There is no cheaper capital out there possible. And that cheaper capital is very powerful when it can buy projects, or as Joe was saying, based on the delivery of projects and the performance, it can pay for a good or a service that's being provided. That allows, based on that ability for them to buy those projects and put that funding, that allows private sector to not finance projects, but to put up risk capital on their balance sheet, to put in working capital, sweat time, working capital to make and position themselves to deliver these projects that are performance-based and paid after delivery. And that's a really important role that government plays in the stormwater program, is making a commitment to define and buy that stormwater so that the private sector can position itself to make investments of time and money into delivering the stormwater and developing the local capacity. Unique to the Prince George's County model and Chester Stormwater Authority and others, Corvius is not allowed to self-perform the work. We have no shovels, we have no yellow iron, we have no engineers. All of the design planning and construction has to be done by other. We can't do it. We can't self-perform it in a vertically integrated model. So we have to manage everything. We have to take accountability for everything, but we can't do anything. And that, that's true control. When you really think, or the art of control is to be able to orchestrate and conduct the music, but we can't play any instruments. And that's why the community-based partnership is really critical to foster education, training, capacity development, because we have to create the means in which everyone to be successful, because we are ultimately accountable from a financial position on whether they're successful or not, which makes us gives us a vested interest in the small business community, in the project selection that we line up for them to be successful. Compliance and community impact. Compliance is huge. Again, the why is very important. The what is very complicated. Stormwater is a very complicated infrastructure to plan for, to measure, to regulate. There's lots of different aspects around TMDLs, around pollution loading, around technologies and the assumptions that go into it that make it very complicated for businesses to participate. That's why the how, the solution, needs to be very straightforward, simple, and consumable by your local capacity. And by lining up project prioritization with local capacity knowledge and evolving it, allows you to go slow to go fast, as Joe has talked about with the Clean Water Partnership. The Clean Water Partnership has evolved from 2,000 acres to 4,000 acres to 5,000 acres. We're eating the elephant one bite at a time and going faster and faster, and the capacity to do it locally is happening more and more. And it's really building a community center of excellence, a community-based local center of excellence that can be replicated across any communities. There's a really important aspect. People talk about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. You'll hear about this probably, I'm sure, in other sustainability around investors looking for more ESG. The reality is the business community is looking for more environmental, social, governance applications because they're good investments, not because they feel good. You will find that all investments still require a standard rate of return that's competitive in the marketplace. But the reality is there is better ways to go about the practice. And we have to create delivery structures that allow private sector and private money to invest in those better ways of delivering. So too often we continue to, solar is a great example of this, where it takes too long to deliver a different practice because we have to overcome policies or monopolies or old institutions that restrict innovation and restrict the ability to apply a different practice. So environmental, social governance, stormwater fits in really nicely to be able to focus an environmental aspect, a social aspect around local workforce utilization and reducing barriers to entry, and then a governance. And the governance is the performance-based, the idea that while it's construction, it's just as important to measure the schedule and cost as it is to measure who does the work locally and put that as part of the quantifications. So this is a real quick diagram. I'm not going to go into too much. I have a next slide to talk about it, but the question of how do we do this? How do we organize a program? You have a portion here that is, you have the beginning portion here, in this slide deck here is program definition. Joe talked about the way that the public and the private work together on a monthly, weekly, annual basis with these annual plans, everything. It truly is a partnership. While we own the accountability and the risk, we can't do anything without their buy-in and without their agreement and their knowledge that they have as the public institution. Community-based public-private partnership is about complementing your public government, not privatizing or replacing that. It's about complementing that, providing access to innovation, providing process engineering, providing new flexibility that they don't have as government in their processes, while still keeping with public procurement practices and concepts that keep a fair and equitable checks and balances in government work. But this point here of defining goals and visions and building those goals and visions into a measurable framework that you can then quantify financially leads into this section here, which is really more about prioritizing projects, bundling those projects, and lining that up with the capacity that's available in the marketplace. Sorry, no, I did that fancy.
Hey, Greg, can you
Yep.
speed it up a little bit so we can get to Dr. Strand too?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Good stuff.
So real quickly, last slide, aggregation and risk management. This is a quick what we do. This is the how. This is really tangible. We inventory all the potential projects that are based on the goals and objectives. We prioritize those projects on a balance sheet. We put investment to all potential projects to bring them up to a point of consideration so that we can really determine which projects will yield the best outcome from a regulatory, financial, and community benefit. And then we paper those projects, and we put the low priority projects in these red boxes on the side. They're low priority today, but after you go through the low hanging fruit, they might be high priority tomorrow. And you've already invested in them. So they sit on your balance sheet as an asset because they're ready to go when they are of a higher priority. And then we focus on those constructed projects. And that allows us to create a forward production line that is very affordable and effective and efficient, that gives the municipality real actionable, constructible projects in a timely manner. And then the last is just the life cycle accountability. Because of the way the delivery and the contracts are structured, as Joe said, traditional contracting, you pay as you go for work before the outcomes are achieved. And a lot of it has cost overruns as the time's happening, versus the performance base. You pay nothing during the design build, or you pay little during the design build, and you pay once it's delivered based on its performance that's happening. So the public is able to push its investment to buy performance versus paying for work in place on a pay-as-you-go basis. And that's all. There you go, Dominic.
Sorry, I was looking to unmute. So we want to move on to Dr. Strand. I'm going to try to do a share screen, but Dr. Strand, feel free to start sharing.
Well, I'm excited about
have about 5 to 7 minutes left.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As I was saying, I'm excited about the opportunity to be a part of this panel discussion. I really think that it's important to understand the benefit of private-public partnership, especially in communities like Chester, where you have low-income minority individuals who are struggling financially, and municipalities and government officials who are looking for ways to meet some of the crucial needs within your community. A few years ago, the EPA put out a mandate that communities that are in close proximity to the waterways come up with a comprehensive plan to reduce the amount of poison that's going to the waterways and to better manage stormwater runoff. Chester, being economically depressed, did not have the means by which, or the ability financially, to put together such a plan and to manage it, because they were struggling managing the daily operations of the city as it was. I was asked, because of my work within the environmental justice community and years with the EPA and DEP, to support a project that would enable them to establish a stormwater authority. It was unique that the city of Chester was positioned and in a position to do this without having the financial means to do it. But because of the fact that we were able to partner with others who had expertise in this area and knew what to do, the community was empowered. One of the things that happened in this particular development of the Stormwater Authority was I was doing some environmental justice work in another community that was strapped with a lot of asbestos, and Dominique Lukenhoff had been assigned the task of managing that area for the EPA, and in the process of dealing with some of the issues for that community, I mentioned to her just glancingly and vaguely that the city had asked me to establish a stormwater authority for the city of Chester. Now, asking a Pentecostal preacher to establish a stormwater authority is almost like asking me to build a nuclear submarine within 10 days, you know. But fortunately, when I spoke to Dominique, Dominique was excited about the idea and said, listen, I'm working on this project right now, but if you give me some time, I would like to partner with you and help you establish this stormwater authority for the city of Chester. Unknowns to me, the wealth of knowledge and help that was coming our way was a godsend. And with Dominique's help and also Seth, who partnered with us in this project with Dominique, we were able to get something that never happened before in the history of the state of Pennsylvania. A $1 million grant from the state of Pennsylvania, PennVest, to put together a comprehensive plan to establish a stormwater authority. They had never given any money to a stormwater authority, period. And that's the Pennsylvania infrastructure program there. But with Dominique's help and Seth doing a tremendous job in writing the plan, we were awarded $1 million. With that plan, we were able to launch our request for individuals and companies to come in and to bid on helping us establish a stormwater authority. We put together a plan to deal with the fee system, and but there was just one other problem we had. Although we had $1 million grant to establish a plan, we didn't have money to pay any engineering firm or company to come in and partner with us. So how do we do that? When the call was put out, there were several companies that applied, but there was one company in particular that said, okay, not only will we come and help you, but we're not going to ask for any money from you until we do the work. So I said, okay. And we were excited about the fact that that company was Corbius. And Corbius came in and was true to their word. They rolled up their sleeves and joined forces with us. And the local municipality was excited about the fact that we had expertise from this organization who could come in and show us exactly what to do and how to put together a municipal authority that would have the capability of meeting the needs of over 2,000 inlets that had to be cleaned and maintained on a daily basis in the city of Chester. Our situation is a little different because our projects basically deal with an antiquated system that has been in place for hundreds of years that has been decaying and sometimes causing havoc throughout the city. We had tremendous flooding issues, and communities within our city or local areas there were stressed with flooding from the storms. And this period of flooding seemed to be quite unusual runoff of stormwater than any other period during the past 10 years in our community. So this has been a tremendous help to our community to be able to put together almost overnight the expertise to be able to go out and to secure funding and also bring in engineers and contractors who understood the needs of a low income and minority community, who were willing to meet the requirements of hiring our people and giving them opportunities to be gainfully employed with a sustainable income, and at the same time meet the needs of the infrastructure and reduce the amount of flooding and also reduce the amount of poisons and as going into our waterways by putting in creative programs within the design that treats the waters before it goes into the waterways. So we're excited about what has happened here in Chester. And I was thinking about my years of environmental justice, how although we fought hard to get attention to the issue of environmental justice and some issues have been solved, economic empowerment was always a missing piece to environmental justice. And through this private-public partnership, we not only are dealing with something that's crucial to our environment and to the future of our drinking water throughout the East Coast, but we also are empowering our people. I have over 20 some odd folks on payroll who have sustainable jobs and are happy to work every day and know that they're doing something that's making a difference in their own community. And it proves that with innovative ideas and people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work together, you can make things happen. Chester has a long way to go, but we are further ahead than we would have been if we did not establish a Stormwater Authority and have this partnership. The one thing I will say about the partnership is that I like one of the things that Greg said is that we conduct the music, but we don't play the instruments. But also they come in with an attitude: what can we do to help your community? What do your community want? And they don't come in with the bully. I got all the expertise and I got all this and all that. We come to help you. You show us what you need to do, and we're going to make it happen for you. And that's essential because no community wants to feel like, you got strangers coming to your community, and just make you feel like they're doing you a favor. We work together. We understand what we're doing, and we get the job done. And the community is better off because of it. I would say that any community that is struggling financially to have stormwater needs, that the public-private partnership is the way to go, because it empowers you to be able to have a professional, competent program in a short time that's able to do what is necessary to meet the need of stormwater management. And although I'm not an engineer, I'm more administrator from my training. It has been a tremendous learning curve for me, but also an enjoyable learning curve because I've been empowered with a lot of knowledge and experience with the expertise that's been made available to me through Corbius and others who have come in to make this thing work. All communities that deal with these type of issues need to think out of the box, think differently. As we always talk about how and the government system is so slow to act and takes so much time to get things accomplished, whereas the public-private partnership cuts through all those issues, get right to the point, makes things happen, and the community benefits the most because of it. It's a lot of good people that have made this happen for Chester. And I think in the last 3 years, we have raised through low interest loans from Pinvest close to $40 million that is going into the community. And that's important. Other businesses come in and they talk about great development projects they're going to do, and it goes into their business. But these funds are going directly into the community to benefit the community with long-term solutions that will be there. They'll be there to help the community for years to come. So I think that's about it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Strand. And I appreciate that you sort of brought the EJ aspect of this. I think it's all the components of this exciting, evolving community-based management plan that enables opportunities for everyone. All the speakers sharing how those pieces fit together, how the pieces are built, but starting with the will, the political will to do it, and the leadership that comes with it. I know we're out of time. I just want to impress upon the students that what you're hearing is a wealth of knowledge from the ground level. Chester, I'll just say, was a chapter 47 city. No one was interested. You don't hear businesses that really want to locate to Chester. And what Chester decided to do, in fact, if they had to do this to meet compliance, really it would have been less than $1 million program. They built a $53 million program. They built a solid enterprise through which to carry it out, which is why Pinvest has continued to invest. Through the support of this partnership, it would not have happened. And I do want to impress upon you, this is not like any public-private partnership. What you heard is really what it is. It's defining these alternative high-performance community-based partnerships. And what we're excited about is its ability to address a number of needs of marginalized communities, as well as, I met with one of the wealthiest counties in the state of Maryland, starts with an M. I won't say who they are, but even the wealthiest counties were having problems trying to meet the capacity demands that they had for stormwater permits, and O&M is always the big challenge. Interestingly enough, capital investment finance, whether it's public or private, doesn't fund capital, doesn't fund O&M. But O&M is what gets you your compliance. O&M is what gets you the various types of jobs, including for people that might not have a job, as you heard Michael talk about small businesses and transforming these businesses to do what is really landscaping and hiring local. So I just want to sort of make those points. I know we're way out of time, and we were going to spend a little time with the students, but I did want to round up the conversation this way, and certainly are looking forward to continue to transfer these models. I really want to thank our champions who are here today, who are making this happen, and who in fact have been so willing to share their experiences, their lessons learned, so that it's easier for the next community. Thank you so much for being here.